Hey fellow Warning fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new to the channel, my name's Nina, and today we're going to be doing a lyrical and psychological deep dive of the masterpiece Consume off the album Keep Me Fed. I have been looking forward to this analysis, and I know the song has gotten a lot of attention, not only because it hit so hard musically, but also because it's the first Warning song to include profanity of any kind, which is definitely significant, as it really seems like they wanted to intentionally put out a definitive statement that they are no longer children, which is a theme that I think they also hinted at in the 6 Feet Deep video, which I already did an analysis of. But what I think was even more noteworthy here is the mastery of the songwriting itself, particularly in regard to the lyrics. Of all the songs on the album, I actually think this one is the most powerful and honest, maybe even the most profound, especially because I don't think it's a story or an observation about something else, as they often write about. I think it's an analysis of something they are really experiencing. I think it's almost confessional, or at minimum, deeply self-reflecting. Now, the band has said it's about the cycle of overconsumption and complaining about the system, yet feeding into it themselves at the same time. So in a way, it's an exploration of this paradox, or as it's presented in the song, this admitted hypocrisy. But I also think it touches upon their belief or even understanding that it's a cycle that they have no choice but to participate in if they want to make it. I think it poignantly brings up some really concerning questions, not only about the state of the music industry, but also its impact on the artists who can end up serving as cogs in this toxic machine, and all of us as the consumers of these artists who are being presented to us as products. Now, as many of you know already, I'm a huge supporter of The Warning, and I feel like they possess an almost unparalleled level of skill and artistic integrity. So when I say the word product here, it is in no way meant to be a slight towards the band. I'm just really kind of borrowing from the theme that they themselves are presenting and exploring in this song. So this video is in no way critiquing their approach to being a part of the industry, but merely discussing the state of the industry itself and questioning what we as consumers now demand from these artists, because I think it's a worthy conversation to have that is not talked about nearly enough. I also think the song brilliantly addresses this theme in a very personal and extremely vulnerable way, because although the lyrics paint a picture of the band being deeply critical of consumerism and consumption, it also shows them as willing parts of this very machine, and maybe even kind of enjoying it. I think this is something that not many artists would admit to, even though it's likely true for most of them, if not all of them. And this type of realness, in my opinion, is something that makes the band so appealing and refreshing. Overall, I think the song explores the idea of them being both victims and perpetrators of this dynamic, and what I can only assume is the internal conflict that comes from this awareness. I think it's a really bold topic to discuss, and I think it's handled in such an incredibly raw and artistic way. And it's fascinating to get a glimpse of what it's like to be a part of this machine from their perspective, or at least from the perspective of Pau, who I believe wrote these words. They definitely seem to align with her signature style of songwriting, at least. But let's go ahead and go through the lyrics together so we can truly appreciate them. And as always, I have to give the quick caveat that this is just my own personal analysis. I am in no way attempting to speak for the band. And as with any work of art, there can be multiple valid meanings and interpretations, including whatever the song means to us personally. And of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on the song, so please leave them in the comment section below. I always greatly look forward to reading your insights. So with all of that being said, let's dive into Consume. So the song starts out with the line, "I wear my skin like the burden it is." And I think this one line has so many profound implications. For one, she's immediately sharing with us how hard it is to be her, that on some level it's a burden that comes with certain expectations from the outside world that she feels like she can't escape. But also, I think the word where here is particularly significant because it suggests that maybe this professional identity goes beyond her authentic self and sometimes includes a persona that she has to actively put on and carry around, even when she doesn't feel like it. But either way, she's trying to tell us that being who she is not always easy. The verse continues on with the lines, knowingly thoughtless, I do it regardless. It's your machine, I'm the one running it. Go through the motions, consume all devotion. There is a lot to unpack here. I think it's alluding to the fact that she's made the conscious decision to participate in the consumption cycle without really considering the consequences. Or maybe that she's even made a deliberate decision to disregard the consequences so she can remain a part of it. So in a way, she's saying she's complicit in what the band has suggested on many occasions is a corrupt system. That she recognizes this to be a flaw, but she tries not to think about it too much because she probably does not see an alternative because it does seem to be a requirement of being successful in the industry right now. I think this is a really insightful line because it shows that on one hand, she's aware of her actions, but on the other hand, she's also detached from them. These lines also explain that she feels like she's the one running the show, even though she did not make the rules. So again, she's saying she's both the creator and the product, the artist and the commodity. I think that's really profound. But the last line here is the one that I think is the most clever. She's saying that even though we, the audience, are the ones consuming the product that she is putting out, that she is a consumer too, that she is consuming all the devotion and adoration she receives for being a part of this machine and going through all the necessary motions, which fuels her to be able to create even more for us to consume, and the cycle continues. I find these words, and even just the bravery to admit them, so striking because they are so transparent and so genuine. Again, I don't think a lot of other artists would admit to feeling this way, even though I am sure that most of them could completely relate to what she's saying. And honestly, is anyone really beyond the consumption cycle? I really don't think so. We may want to be, we may think we are, but I don't think that anyone completely is. But moving on, I think the song gets even more interesting in the next part, which I have to unfortunately censor for the sake of YouTube. But it says, you greedy little effer, you sink your teeth in, bleed me out, look for another. Dressed up for slaughter, but you keep it under cover. Lips painted and parted, alone and unguarded. So I think here she's talking about the whole predatory system and how it pulls everything it can from the artists and exploits their image and their talent. And when it's taken all it can, it just looks for another victim to feed off of. But she's also saying that she understands this game and that she's playing the part that she's supposed to play. She's just pretending not to. I think the last line is the most disturbing because to me it shows that she feels completely exposed and that she's vulnerable to exploitation because no one can really protect them from any of this. I mean, they are on tour with their families and they really do seem to try to safeguard themselves from as much of this as humanly possible. But I think these words show that she has an understanding that there are some things that she simply is not in control of. She goes on to say, you willingly participate. You crack a smile and close your eyes and disassociate, blaming the problem, but you know you're still a part of it. You hate that you're a part of it. Hate that you're a part of it. Now, what's really impactful is that all of this is repeated later, except the next time she replaces the word you for the word I. So let's talk about both versions. The distinction is that the first one is a criticism of all the other people who are doing this, and the second one turns into more of a self-criticism, or at least a self-observation. She's saying that even though she knows the reality of the situation, and even though it's something that she on some level may not really be that happy about, that she puts that aside and ultimately succumbs to these external pressures, even though it's something that she judges other people for, like she does in the first version of these lines. And I love that she once again brings up the theme of dissociation as her coping mechanism, because this is something that a lot of us engage in. We may not have the self-awareness to realize that we're doing it, but we often are. This is something that we talked about a lot in the analysis for the song Escapism. But here she's saying that she knows she can avoid confronting the reality of this situation if she just numbs herself out emotionally, which is what she's also suggesting is how everyone else is coping with all of this. I also love that she calls herself out on blaming the problem, but also being a part of it, because as humans, I think that's hard for us to do. It's much easier to just point the finger at everyone else without admitting that we're doing the exact same thing. She goes on to express, however, that she hates that she is part of all of this. The song gets even more intense in the next lines that say, "Watch me, judge me, pull the strings like you do. Love me, hate me, am I worth it to you? Shovel it down my throat, wash it down with remorse. Make me perfect for you." So here I think she's talking directly to us, her audience, saying that not only are we observing her and judging everything that she's doing, but that somehow we're controlling her performance, that how we respond to what she does dictates her future actions, because she can see what brings about applause and praise and what doesn't. I think these lines express the very real human desire for validation and acceptance, but also show her insecurity and self-doubt, which is natural for any of us to struggle with, let alone people who are actually in the spotlight. But I also think that this type of anxiety comes not only from trying to please the audience, but also from the music industry, because when you are signed to any kind of label, you do have to give up at least some control. So I think maybe she just feels like she's being manipulated by all of these factors, which could, of course, make anyone question what they are being asked to do, and maybe even want to shield their true authenticity to try to protect themselves. The last two lines suggest that she feels a lot of pressure to conform to a certain image, and that it can feel suffocating to always have to meet the expectations of others, especially when it means that you are suppressing who you really are or how you want to be portrayed artistically. She says it makes her feel remorseful, and then she offers this kind of cynical invitation to the world to mold her into what we think would be the perfect version of her. Really powerful stuff here. But then we get to this brilliant little tag in the song where she says, "I can't point the finger at you anymore. I couldn't die as the martyr. Now I've become the greedy little effer." So it's just her further acknowledgement of the part that she's playing in all of this. She's saying that she can't call herself a victim anymore because she's an active participant, even though that was never her intention. I think it's a very strong indictment of herself, suggesting that she feels like she's abandoned her idealistic aspirations and become part of the very thing that she once despised. This theme continues to play out in the following lines, which is the repeated chorus that switches out the word you for I. I think that was a really well-crafted artistic choice to make that switch, by the way, because it demonstrates her initial criticism of this behavior and then reveals her later admitting that she eventually gave into it. Now, the song then goes through another series of repeats, but there is one extremely clever line that they sneak in towards the end of the song that I have to bring up, which is actually the album title, "Keep Me Fed." So with the added line, it ends up saying, "Shovel it down my throat, wash it down with remorse, keep me fed, make me perfect for you." I love the ending of the song, and I love how the title of the album is used, because although the band explained the very positive meaning behind the name of the record in the initial interviews, which was that the creation of the album and their experience writing it was keeping them fed, the meaning within this particular song aligns much more with what I speculated it could mean in the video where I talked about the theories about the upcoming album. I thought it likely had to do with consumption or consumerism, because it is a topic that they talk about so often in their lyrics, and something that seemed to be a prominent emerging theme on the first songs that they released before the album came out. So I'm not surprised at all that this line shows up as having a darker meaning here, because it goes along so well with their prior works. And as the line appears here in consume, it's saying that it's a combination of self-consumption, exploitation, personal sacrifice, and even remorse that is actually keeping them fed. And that, of course, she recognizes that this is not a positive thing. But as I said earlier, I think the song also suggests that she feels like she doesn't have a choice, that this is the reality of the industry. Take it or leave it. Unfortunately, if you want to play music that people actually hear and you want to be able to support yourself as a musician, there seems to be no other alternative than to play by these unspoken rules. This lyrical confession makes me respect the band and their artistry even more, if that's even possible, because I commend them for being this candid and also for bringing up a lot of things that I think need to be discussed. Something specific that this song made me think about is to what degree we the fans are complicit in this cycle of consumption and exploitation. And I genuinely don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. How much do you think that fan culture actually contributes to this type of pressure on artists to conform to expectations? Or do you think it just has a lot more to do with the music industry and their greed? This is something that the song really makes me think about. It also makes me think a lot about the impact of social media and how much more important image has become for artists and all the different ways that it's changed the relationship between artists and fans, because we're just becoming more and more invested in their personal lives instead of just their music. I think it's created this relentless demand for constant content and engagement. I just see so many bands on TikTok doing all of these things like these trendy dances and spending all this time doing things that have absolutely nothing to do with their art at all. And I can't imagine this is something that they truly want to be doing. Maybe they do once in a while, but I think there is just so much pressure for them to constantly churn out all this content, which I'm sure just steals away from time that they could be using to actually relax a little bit or to create things that they genuinely care about. I also think that all of this has started to really blur the lines between artists and fans to the point where we can feel like we really do have a personal relationship with them, even though they don't know us. And I know there are a lot of benefits to that on both sides, but I also think it can make us feel even more entitled to have strong opinions on what they do or say. I am curious to hear if this is something that you've thought about or something that you agree with also. And if you think that we're asking too much of artists. Do you think that our need for things to consume is something that they can even realistically keep up with in the long term? When I think about The Warning specifically, I am just in amazement of all they are doing lately. They've just had show after show and interview after interview and all of this content that is constantly going, both music related and non-music related, which I'm sure is completely enjoyable for them to create sometimes, but it also must be really exhausting. It begs the question, is it even possible for bands to just be musicians now? Or is participating in all of this a non-negotiable requirement of success? Would we be as attached to them if they did not do all of this? I don't know. I honestly do not have the answers. My first experience with The Warning was the music video for Evolve, and I instantly fell in love with the whole package. And my fandom of the band only increased when I learned more about them and I saw what incredible people they were in interviews. So I'm really not sure where that line in the sand should be. I guess it's probably different for every artist and what they can personally take. I mean, in the end, they are human beings like everyone else and have their own needs and limitations. And I know from experience that constantly working can certainly lead to burnout, even when you're doing something that you really love. In the end, I think the balance between artistic expression and commercial success is an extremely delicate one, and that the song Consume explores this truth in a very real and vulnerable way. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album, and I appreciate it even more after analyzing it. And I completely respect Dany, Pau, and Ali, not only for their artistry, but also for their honesty. And as always, I would love to hear what you have to say about this song and if you agree with this analysis. So please leave your thoughts down below. Don't forget to let me know what song you'd like me to analyze next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.